How are you?
Oh, great,
I'm
thanks.
Tim, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
So what did you bring in here, this great old thing?
This is a lady's fire screen from the Victorian era, and I understand they were popular late 1700s, early 1800s. I think probably in more elite homes because the ladies' makeup was always wax base, and if they got too close to the heat, their makeup melted.
Their face cracked.
So they would set these between the fireplace and the lady, and they're adjustable. And I just
where
like
did you get it? I mean, you're here in Montana, where Montana started in 1889, but people were here in 1863. Where did you pick it up here?
I actually bought this here in Montana. I don't buy a whole lot of things from antique shops, but I did because I like unusual things, and this was something I had not seen before, and it was unusual, and I just liked it.
Okay.
And I like the flowers. I like botanicals, so this was just something
Well,
nice.
botanicals are of the era. This botanical transfer, or I'm sorry, this is hand painted here.
Yes.
Is done later. The original piece is all maple. If you were to look at some of the wear spots on the decoupage, which is what this paint finish is, you'll see that underneath it's a maple wood. How the original maker who made this began is with a block of wood. He turned it on a lathe, so it's lathe turned. He added these cabriole legs later, C-A-B-R-I-O-L-E. They were cope cut, so he had a board and he took a cope saw and then sanded them off. But it's early American style. You know, the piece underneath the paint, it's hard to tell exactly when it was made. It could be as early as Queen Anne, which is 1750s, 1760s period. Then it morphed into Chippendale era, which is 1760s, 1770 in there. But somebody in the 1960s went with the fad that they had in the 1960s of decoupaging everything. And you could go down to Newberry's or Albertsons or any chain store and buy a kit where you would paint this green and then antique it over it. And so the painting is not to the period. Who knows what's under the paint? There might be some great old finish to it. It seriously affects the value. I mean, it's a charming piece. It's very well made because it's so slight. Generally, when something is this old and it's still together and tight and sound, when it's that delicate, it means it was well made. So, you know, I look in the auction houses. Christie's sells ladies' fireplace screens like this at, say, $2,500 to $5,000 with the original finishes. So, you know, if it were mine, I would leave it as is, and someday somebody will probably pick it up, and probably currently about $800. And thank you.
Okay, great, thanks.
And, hi, Ed, how are you doing?
Good.
Where did you get the guitar originally?
In California, Santa Ana, California.
Did you play?
Yes, a little bit.
Well, the Martin factory, I mean, they're legends in guitars. And I believe that they started in the Victorian era in Pennsylvania. You'll see guitars that you almost don't recognize as guitars, which Martin were making at the time period. How you date a Martin guitar, there's a wonderful website that tells you by serial number when this was made, as well as the model, and it's always inside. As I look in here, I see the serial number is 105875, and it's a model 0017. And I did a little pre-research on it, and I found out that serial number puts it at 1949, and the 0017 was actually patented in 1948. So, you know, I don't know how many of this guitar were made, but, you know, a few thousand, and this would have been towards the second year of the run. If you look at the head, it's got the CF Martin logo up here, which shows it's in great shape. You haven't beat it up at all. The finish is beautiful on the mahogany. And here, you know, you have the mock tortoise, the original pick guard. You have the De La Monde pickup. You know, sometimes Martin, I believe, used humbucker pickups too. But, you know, the only one of these I could see which is sold at auction, it actually sold at Christie's, and it belonged to Eric Clapton. And the reason it was in Christie's and had belonged to Clapton is because it was his first guitar, and he was all nostalgic about it. That guitar sold for $28,000. Well, it was Eric Clapton's guitar, and so I was, with a little research, I could pin down the exact value on this, but I believe it'll be $5,000 to $8,000, somewhere in that price range. And because you've kept it in such great condition, I think it'll be top of the range. It's a 10 out of a 10 as far as condition is concerned. So, okay, thank you. So Ed, what's the violin you brought in here?
It was a violin that has been handed down. My father bought it in 1929. I have the bill of sale here.
Really? What did he pay for it?
He paid
1929.
He paid $200.
Wow. So in
$273. It's a violin that was made in 1875, and he bought it just before the Depression. He was a builder, and they worked in Kansas, and his father and him built homes. And when he left the home, he had $500, and he purchased the violin and he purchased stock.
Really?
And 2 weeks later, the stock depleted. It's not worth a thing. So he's kept the violin. It's been in our family for 80 years.
Really? Wow.
And
The best investment, wasn't it?
yeah, my dad used it, and I used it quite a bit. And we've just tried to keep it in the family, find somebody that would like to use it and play it and love it as much as we did.
Yeah, that's fascinating. Let me look inside and look and see who made it. Generally, a violin will have a label or a pen signature by the maker inside. I mean, from the very beginning, violin artists were artists and recognized as such. So they were very proud of their instruments. This one actually is signed in here by him, Carlo Dinelli. So it's C-A-R-L-O and then D-I-N-E-L-L-I. It's dated 1896, and this is in his own handwriting. So when you have a violin like this, where do you find out what it's worth? There's quite a commerce in fine violins like this. All the major auction houses have experts who are violin experts. This last week I was speaking with Carrie Keene at Christie's regarding an antique violin. If you look at a violin, you can tell if it's German or Italian. This is an Italian piece, and how you tell that are by the woods and by the scroll. It's just a little bit different style than the German pieces. This is a split back, and this is a tiger striped maple back here. In beautiful sound, tight, wonderful condition, and I assume it's got, how's the tone on it? Is it a really nice tone?
They're very nice.
Yeah. With a modicum of research, I could probably find this maker. In my initial search, I didn't find him as having sold at auction. So, I don't have any reference point on the value on this, but I can tell you that it's a fine violin. And just to draw it into perspective, I had an Italian violin that was much earlier this week, which I spoke with Christie's about, and they estimated it at $40,000 to $60,000. Well, this is 100 years later, 150 years later. It's an Italian piece. It's a really fine Italian piece. I would say it'd be in perhaps the low 1,000 range. I need a little more research to be able to give you the definitive on it, though, okay? But it's beautiful, it's well made, and the history is fabulous on it. So, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I bought a ivory, and it's got the President Cleveland and his wife sitting in a swing in it inside.
It's got the president inside?
Uh-huh.
Oh, okay.
It does.
All right. He was almost as big as Taft. I don't know how he fits in here. What I see in here, okay, this is a carved ivory container. It's all scrimshaw carved and hand turned. And inside have you heard the term Stanhope before?
No.
Okay, it's a Stanhope picture. And they were a popular form of, it was a novelty for viewing things where you look through a little pinhole, and believe it or not, inside there you see Grover Cleveland, the President of the United States, and his wife. And was this given out by the President in campaigns? Perhaps not. It was probably people were, it'd be like going to buy an Obama t-shirt now. You would love the president, and you would, some of us would love the president, and you would go ahead and buy a souvenir. This is a higher end souvenir, and it's quite a novelty to have that Stanhope in there. The Stanhopes, without researching it, they were invented in England in the early 19th century, mid 19th century. It was such a novelty in the middle of London, right off of Piccadilly Circus. You see Stanhope Gardens. I mean, it's like it was so cool they named the street after it. So, yeah, I guess they needed to get a life, didn't they? Yeah. But presidential pieces like this are actually very, very interesting to collectors. One of the main auction houses who deal with presidential pieces are Heritage Auctions in Dallas. They say that they're the third largest auction house in the world, and they've made a lot of money on presidential items as well as coins and antiques and art and paintings. A piece like this generally, if it were a Stanhope of a deer, it would be worth $250 because it's ivory and it's a Stanhope. But when you throw in the whole political mix, it's almost like a political button. It could be, I'm going to guess and say $1,500. But there's a possibility, if I did my research, I would be able to tell you that it could be even higher. So generally, Stanhopes are great. Ivory is great. The main marketplace for collectibles now are the major auction houses or eBay. Well, eBay has banned the trade of ivory as far as I know. So, the piece is worth that price range.
I gave $80 for it.
You did?
Yes.
You are good. I'm going to hire you to go find things for me. All right.
I love it.
Thank you so much. I love
Thank
your
you.
accent, too. Where
Thank
is
you.
your accent from?
Tupelo, Mississippi.
Oh, the hell it is. Yeah, it's
It
beautiful.
is.
Yeah, I like you. All right, thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah. Hey, Billy, how are you doing? Thanks for coming in. Yeah. So, what did you bring?
I brought some metal pictures and this carbide lamp.
Okay.
Well, that's a print. I don't know about that.
Yeah, actually, it's a stack of things.
Yeah.
And I always love, in old trunks, when you're digging through an old trunk when it's coming out of an estate or something, you often find ephemera and knickknacks and Stanhopes and great little stuff. Okay, this is a Japanese woodblock print. It's, some of these were produced in Japan, and the height of their popularity began in the 1600s. And there are any number of artists who are quite important and prominent to collectors and the art world. I've seen some of these go as high, not this one, don't get your hopes up, into $250,000
Wow.
and more. There are wonderful sites on the internet where you can decipher their signature here. And so, that takes a little research, but go onto the internet and you'll be able to find out who the artist was. I love early photography because just the idea that you see every little mark on his face and his expression and his emotions. That's what hits me.
Cotton time.
Yeah, these little pieces here are third or fourth in the lineage of photography. Photography started by Louis Daguerre in France in, I believe it was 1833, 34. Collectors love them when there's character or occupation or event in them. And we have 5 of them here that are all ferrotypes, and they're just of people. If you knew who the people were, they would be great. I had a little ferrotype one time of John Wesley Hardin, the gunfighter, and I got $8,000 for it. But
Mabel.
Yeah, I hear you. So these are going to be not much, $10 perhaps each, but they're more charming than that.
Yeah.
If you decorate your home, if you like Victoriana, it's great to have this little owl-eyed little Victorian person looking at you. There's art involved in all of it.
Super.
Yeah, there you go.
That's neat.
Yeah. The other thing that you brought in is, it's kind of neat to see this mint in box, and collectors love to find things mint in box. This falls into the collectible area of mining collectibles. And here in Montana, we had plenty of that, didn't we?
Yeah, there's a lot of-
This would be for an underground miner. Butte must have had the run on just right carbide lamps. I bet that they sold 500,000 of these in the history of Butte. This is wonderful because it has the original fold out for ordering parts.
Yeah.
If you don't know what a carbide lamp is, it's a mineral that you put in here, and when it gets wet, it emits gas. And so then you can strike the striker up here, which has a flint, and it'll light that gas.
So it makes a flame.
Yes.
On your head.
Yeah, flame on your head, so you want to
Good.
watch your hair, yeah. And it's actually quite bright with the polished reflector. You know, when you're underground, you would be able to see probably 8, 10, 12 feet with it. This one being mint in box, the idea being it's so perfect that a carbide lamp collector, of whom there are many, would love it. And I would say that it would sell, if this were out of box, beat up, used from Butte, it'd be worth $60. As this sits, I say it's worth $250 just because it's
Really?
absolutely mint. Yeah.
Cool.
So there you go. Thank you very much.
Thank
I
you.
appreciate it. Yeah. Hi, Lois.
Hi,
So
how
where
are
did
you?
Good to meet you.
Thank
Where
you.
did you get this beautiful picture?
I got the picture at an estate sale, and I didn't know if it had any particular value, but I liked it because it is a picture of Jesus. I'm assuming teaching at the temple.
It looks like it. I think he turned up missing for a few days, but it is. And I've actually seen works by this artist before. Trying to see here if I can see his name. Have you been able to spot a signature? This one is not signed on
I
the front,
haven't.
and they generally put a label on the backing paper, which
But
is
the
gone.
paper's gone.
Yeah.
Yes.
Voila, it's gone. I'll tell you what the process is and the date, and I can't tell you the artist's name, even though I've seen other portraits of Christ by him. He's a big religious art painter at the time. The original painting was probably done in the 1920s. In America, there was a funny thing happening, and there were all these new printing processes came out in the Victorian era through the 1940s that they hadn't had before, and because we didn't really have television at the time, because there was so little press, everybody seemed to kind of have the same prints. In America, there was one print of the Lone Wolf, for instance, and they made over 10 million copies of it. So you go in everybody's log cabin or tar paper shack or mansion in Montana, you would see that same print over and over. I've actually seen a number of these because it was a popular print and it was mass produced. These were produced in the 1930s. It's on a textured paper to give an oil painting effect, but it's actually an offset litho process. Lithography originally was done with stones, and they would run various colors on the stones to print the old papers. Well, this became a mechanized, ka-ching, ka-ching, ka-ching sort of a printing process. And if you look at it with a glass, actually take a look, why don't you? Real close into, say, the robe of Christ here, you'll see cross-graining, almost screening like you would see on a television screen. And
I do.
Yeah, and so if you ever have a print and you want to know if it was produced before, say, 1915, 1910, a good way to do is to see if it has that cross graining. If it has it, then it's after that time period. So 1930s, a high-end, it's a very well done piece. The frame is period. Value on it, I see them in antique stores for a couple $100 on the high end, yeah. Okay. But it's nicer than that. And the reason for that is there were a heck of a lot of them produced, and rightfully so. I wish they were still knocking them out. Everybody's ashamed to put a religious picture up in their house for some reason today, but I'd hang it proudly. So.
Well, on the back, you can see that it has $15 written down here, and I don't know if that was the price at this estate sale that we paid for it.
It's hard to say. When this, in the 1920s or 30s, could that have been $15? Probably not. Well, close. So it could be the original price. Who knows?
Okay.
If you got it for $15 at the estate sale, then that was a good buy. So.
It has sentimental value to me, so it's well worth it.
Yeah, I think so too. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah. Hi, Daryl. How are you?
Hi, I'm good.
Good to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Yeah, these are great. Where did you find these?
Picked them up at a silent auction.
Somebody had donated to an
Yeah,
auction?
right, right.
Right. Have you found out anything about them? Have you researched
Have
them out?
no idea.
Well, they're a foreign-made set of cameo jewelry. They're made of abalone / mother-of-pearl shell, which is how you get that wonderful shiny opalescent look. Cameo cut, there are artisans who go in and they'll actually carve the ladies' faces and heads out of the abalone shell, give it to the people who are making the jewelry with these bezel, these kind of bezel fittings, and then they sell to high-end jewelry stores initially. I would say these are Italian-made. I say that because of the cut and the style of the mounts. They're not marked sterling and they're not marked silver. They're marked with an Italian mark on the back. It's a number marking as to the content of the silver. Cameos they're a little bit like paintings. You can tell what's a good cameo or a not great cameo by how well the face or the head or the bust is carved. There are some that you see in museums that have layer after layer and flowing features on the people or the figures in them. These ones are a little bit stick figure, meaning that they're beautiful, but the artist was knocking them out fairly quickly, I think. Yeah. But I like the mountings better. I mean, the silver work, the filigree, the borders are all beautifully hand worked. So, I already knocked the quality of them, but let's step back and see that these are at least 80 to 100 years old. You have the full set. You have the pendant on chain, you have the clasp earrings, and you have the ring. And, it's remarkable that those are all still together after all these years. In my business, I've been an antique dealer since I was a kid. You just never find it all together like that. So values on them. If you had the pendant alone, I would put it in one of my stores for $150. The ring I would throw out there at about $125. The clasp earrings at about $90. So if you add that all up, it's $300 and over, $400. So that's the value of them. They're beautiful. They're old. They're cool. I like them.
Oh, great.
All right, thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
This pouch has been in my family. And I had a grandfather who was in the cavalry, and he was stationed in Fort Spokane, and at that time, he wrote this letter about being with the Indians.
This is great, yeah.
I asked my mother what she knew about it when she was living, and she said, I have no idea. It's been around for years. I have no idea what it is. Now, if you look on the bottom of it, it has a price tag on it. There's $1 and it's 15 cents. But what puzzles me, it looks like it's machine sewn. So then
Very astute. That's good.
Yeah. Well, I'm a seamstress,
on the other side of the coin, though, they had sewing machines in the 1840s.
So
but we'll move to the
well,
bag
okay.
here soon,
I'm just trying. So I'm trying to see if this bag
Or
relates to my grandfather, because he spent time in Spokane and
How long
that
did
area
your
with the
grandfather
cavalry.
live? When did he pass away? Because I'm going to burst your bubble here pretty quick. on it,
Okay,
yeah.
well, that's okay. I'm curious.
Well,
We're just curious.
I'm curious in his history. I bet it's so. This book is
Well,
about
this is a book that my husband put together for my mother's 80th birthday.
Oh, really?
And so
Oh,
we
neat.
put this letter in there, and there's pictures. Here's a picture of him. And
handsome guy.
and he was a German immigrant that went in, and he pretty much made the cavalry his but see, here's the Indian. But
The
to me, the two don't really relate. I think this looks too modern to have been from his era.
Correct, you're done. Thanks. No,
Yeah.
no, actually,
That's my feeling
I think
about it,
your
but-
treasure here is the history of your grandfather. you know, to be in the cavalry in the West is a slice of American history that's
Yeah,
that's
we have
real
his
interesting.
chest. We have his.
Oh, have you?
That has the William Reimer on it. It's the military
I wish you
chest.
brought that in.
Well,
All right, let's
we don't have a pickup.
Let's destroy your poor bag here.
Okay.
We're gonna pick it apart here.
Okay.
Actually, it's a nice bag. It may or may
No.
not be Indian made, Native American made.
well, that's what I wondered.
Yeah, and the reason I can't say definitively if it is or not is that, okay, first of all, it's a very late bag.
That's what I thought.
Yeah, it dates to around 1950 or 60.
Okay.
And you're correct. You know, it's all machine sewn. You can tell a lot by the leather, the stitching, and the beadwork.
Right.
The beadworks, just the colors in those, as well as the form, tell me that they were produced after World War II era.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, the leather, same thing. You know, it's a suede
Yeah,
rough
it's-
out leather that you would see mini Tonka moccasins made from, or you know, all these.
Well,
they're-
see, when I was in high school, I went Flathead County High School,
Oh,
and
did
we were
you?
the Braves.
Yeah, my
We used-
mother went there.
Yeah, and we used to go down to Ernie White's
Okay.
and buy the moccasins, and this reminds me of what those moccasins were like. 'cause
Well, that's
they
where I
were-
was going. I think that it was probably sold in a store when that was popular.
Yeah, but the 15 cents throws me.
Yeah, well, I think that, like the last lady asked me if the price on the frame was from an estate sale, and I thought not. I think this price is from an estate sale.
Yeah.
So, long story short, it's a pretty recent bag. It's got lots of charm, but it falls more in the idea of collecting 1950s, 60s Western garb,
Okay.
and there are
Okay.
collectors of that. The bag is worth around $65.
Oh,
But the history
well, I
is
don't-
invaluable because there's very
Yeah.
few people who are still here whose grandfather was in the cavalry in the West. So.
Well, he must have died in the 50s.
Really? Yeah. Did anybody write? I mean, you've got a lot of material here from him. And did anybody ever interview him?
My husband's writing a book about it right now.
Oh, really?
We got to find a
Sign me
publisher.
up for a copy. Yeah,
We got to find a publisher first.
Really? Talk to you. There's a couple good guys around here.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, all right.
Okay.
Well, thank you so much.
Oh, thank
I'd love
you.
to take the time to sit and read all these. Call me sometime
Yeah,
when
yeah.
the book's out. Okay.
Okay.
All right.